When you rise from what tried to bury you, you will not come back the same. You cannot go through fire and return without the shine of refined gold. You cannot endure storms and step out without the strength of one who has walked with God in the wind and rain. A comeback does not return you to where you were. It propels you into who you were always meant to become. The setback was the classroom, but the comeback is the graduation. And when you stand on the other side, you don't just stand, you testify. Think about Peter. He denied the Lord 3 times, broken and ashamed, convinced he had failed beyond repair. Yet when grace touched his life, he didn't just come back forgiven. He came back fearless. The man who once ran in fear stood before crowds on the day of Pentecost and preached with power that shook nations. His setback became the soil of his testimony, and his testimony became the key to unlocking faith in thousands. Your comeback carries a sound. It is the sound of resilience, the sound of victory, the sound of a testimony that cannot be silenced. People who only knew you in your setback will be amazed at the strength of your comeback. They saw you cry, but they didn't know you'd rise. They saw you fall, but they didn't know God would lift you higher than before. They saw you broken, but they didn't know the pieces would be put back together into something more beautiful than before. That is the power of a comeback. It doesn't erase the pain, it redeems it. Don't be ashamed of your scars. Scars are evidence that you've survived what was meant to destroy you. Scars preach sermons without words. Scars tell the world, yes, I was wounded, but I was healed. Yes, I was hurt, but I didn't stay broken. Yes, I went through the valley, but I didn't die there. Your scars are not a sign of weakness. They are proof of God's strength. Somebody else will find hope in your healing. Somebody else will see your life and know that if God did it for you, He can do it for them. When you come back stronger, you come back stronger, you come back wiser. You come back with vision that is sharper, faith that is deeper, and courage that is unshakable. The comeback version of you is not the same as the version that went into the setback. The fire has burned off the fear. The storm has washed away the doubt. The valley has taught you to depend on God in a way you never did before. You are not just restored, you are transformed. And with transformation comes testimony. Your life becomes living proof of divine faithfulness. The same people who thought it was over for you will have to watch you rise. The same mouths that doubted you will have to testify that God's hand is on you. The comeback gives glory not to your strength, but to the one who carried you through the weakness. That is why your testimony matters. It points back to the God who turns mourning into dancing, sorrow into joy, and graves into gardens. So don't hide your story, don't silence your testimony. Let the world see what God has done. Let the people hear how far you've come. Your comeback is not just for you, it's for the countless others who need to know that falling is not the end, that failure is not final, and that God is still able to raise the broken, the weary, and the defeated into newness of life. When you rise this time, rise with a roar, rise with a story. Rise with a faith that cannot be shaken. Your setback was real, but your comeback is greater. And when the dust settles, you'll stand as living proof that nothing, no pain, no loss, no failure, no enemy can stop the hand of God from bringing you into your destiny. The depth of your struggle is a prophecy of the height of your victory. You cannot expect a small battle to precede a mighty breakthrough. The greater the setback, the greater the comeback. Life has a way of convincing you that the harder you fall, the less chance you have of standing again. But heaven operates by a different principle. The harder the fall, the higher the bounce. The more severe the setback, the more spectacular the testimony. What you think is crushing you is really preparing you for a glory that far outweighs the pain. Look at the patterns throughout history. When Israel stood before the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army behind them, it looked like total defeat. There was no way out, no escape, no hope. But the bigger the obstacle, the bigger the miracle. That's when God split the sea wide open, and Israel walked through on dry ground. The greater the opposition, the greater the revelation of God's power. Had the enemy not chased them, they would never have witnessed the sea part. Think of Daniel thrown into the lion's den. That was no small setback. It was a death sentence. But the greater the threat, the greater the comeback. God shut the mouths of the lions and lifted Daniel higher in influence than before. The same pit that was supposed to bury him became the platform that elevated him. That's how God works. He uses the very thing designed to destroy you as the stage to display His glory. And then there is the cross. What greater setback could there be than the Son of God hanging between two thieves, mocked, beaten, pierced, and buried in a borrowed tomb? To the world, it looked like the end. To His followers, it looked like defeat. But 3 days later, the stone rolled away and resurrection power announced the greatest comeback in history. That's the pattern. The bigger the cross, the greater the crown. Your life follows the same rhythm. The intensity of your struggle is a sign of the magnitude of your destiny. If the battle feels unbearable, it's because the blessing on the other side is unimaginable. If the enemy has come against you with full force, it's because he knows what's waiting for you rise again. Hell does not waste resources on someone who has no future. The fact that the warfare is great is evidence that the comeback will be greater. Don't despise the depth of your valley, because the deeper the valley, the higher the mountain on the other side. Don't curse the weight of your burden, because the heavier the weight, the stronger you will become when you carry it. Don't fear the size of your storm, because the greater the storm, the brighter the rainbow of promise after it passes. Some of you are looking at the scale of your setback and wondering, why me? Why is this so hard? Why does it feel like everything is against me? But could it be that the magnitude of your pain is simply a reflection of the magnitude of your purpose? Could it be that God is allowing this level of resistance because He is preparing you for this level of influence? When you rise out of this, you won't just come back. You'll come back with more strength, more wisdom, more resilience, more anointing, more authority. Your setback is not a tombstone. It's a launching pad. It's the tension of the bow that determines the distance of the arrow. The further life pulls you back, the farther you will soar when God releases you forward. So don't quit in the middle of the battle. Don't wave the white flag when the fire gets hotter. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. The greater the setback, the greater the comeback. And when your comeback arrives, it will silence every doubt, shut every lying tongue, and testify to everyone around you that God still brings beauty out of ashes and victory out of defeat. Pain is never pleasant, but pain is never wasted. There are moments in life when the weight feels unbearable, when the tears won't stop flowing, when the questions have no answer, and you wonder why God would allow you to walk through such darkness. But what you don't realize is that pain has a purpose. Every tear you cry, every night you toss and turn, every season you think is breaking you apart is actually shaping something powerful inside of you. Pain is the womb of purpose. Out of the crushing comes the calling. Out of the breaking comes the blessing. Think about it. A woman in labor doesn't enjoy the contractions, the groaning, the intensity of the pain. Yet that pain is proof that something new is about to be born. If she judged her situation by the pain alone, she might think it's all destruction. But when the child is placed in her arms, she realizes that the pain was the necessary passageway for purpose. In the same way, your pain is birthing something in you. Don't curse the contractions of life. They are ushering in your destiny. Moses had to flee into the desert before he could return as a deliverer. That season of pain stripped him of pride, taught him humility, and prepared him for leadership. Hannah wept bitter tears year after year before she gave birth to Samuel, a prophet who would anoint kings. Even Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane felt the crushing weight of sorrow until sweat dropped like blood. But out of that pain came the salvation of the world. None of it was wasted. All of it had a purpose. Pain has a way of teaching lessons prosperity can never teach. Success whispers, suffering shouts. Pain reveals what comfort conceals. It exposes what's broken inside of us, confronts what we've ignored, and pushes us closer to God in ways that He's never could. You may not like it, but pain is often the greatest preacher in your life. It tells you you can't do this alone. It shouts, you need God's strength. It whispers that there's more inside of you than you realize. The enemy wants you to think your pain is punishment. He wants you to believe that God has abandoned you, that suffering means rejection. But the truth is, pain is often proof that God is preparing you for more. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Olive oil flows only after crushing. Gold is purified only after the fire. And you, beloved, are being shaped in the same way. What feels like it's killing you is actually building you. What feels like it's breaking you is really making you. Don't despise your pain. Don't run from it. Don't numb it with distractions or drown it with bitterness. Face it, because on the other side of pain is the discovery of purpose. Every scar carries a story, and your story will be the key to unlocking hope in somebody else's life. The very pain you're going through now will become the testimony you share later. And when you stand on the other side of it, you'll look back and realize the crushing was necessary for the calling.
So hold on in the middle of the storm. Endure the nights of weeping, because joy is coming in the morning. Don't give up under the weight of the pressure, because the pressure is producing something in you. The pain you feel today is the purpose you will walk in tomorrow.
And when you come through, you will not only rise stronger, you will rise with a testimony that gives glory to God and light to those still walking in the dark. Have you ever been in a season where you prayed, you fasted, you believed, and still the door closed in your face? You knocked, but nobody answered. You planned, but nothing worked out. You thought this was the moment, but the opportunity slipped away. In those moments, the human heart wants to say, a God has forgotten me. Maybe he doesn't care. Maybe I missed my chance. But the truth is, delay is not denial. When God holds something back, it's not because he has abandoned you. It's because he has something greater in store. Think about the farmer T.D. He plants the seed, waters the ground, and waits. He doesn't dig up the seed every morning to see if it's growing. He knows growth takes time. Delay doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means something is happening beneath the surface that you cannot see. Your life works the same way. While you are waiting, while you are frustrated, while you are wondering why it hasn't happened yet, God is developing something in you, around you, and for you that will be revealed in due season. Abraham was promised a son, but the promise didn't show up right away. He had to wait years before Isaac was born. David was anointed king as a boy, but he had to endure battles, betrayals, and wilderness seasons before he ever sat on the throne. Even Jesus didn't step into his public ministry until he was 30 years old. All of them faced delay, but none of them were denied. The waiting room of life is where character is forged, faith is tested, and endurance is built. Delay is the classroom of destiny. It teaches you to trust God when you can't trace him. It stretches your faith beyond feelings and pushes you to lean not on your own understanding. If everything happened instantly, you wouldn't learn patience, you wouldn't learn persistence, you wouldn't develop the strength you need to carry the blessing when it finally arrives. Some of you are asking God for a promotion, but he's using the delay to make sure you can handle the weight of the palace when you get there. You're praying for a relationship, but he's using the delay to heal you so you don't bleed on someone else. You're asking for the door to open, but he's fixing what's on the other side, so when you walk through, you'll be ready to stay there. You've got to shift your perspective. Stop seeing the delay as punishment and start seeing it as preparation. The longer the delay, the greater the setup. Sometimes God holds it back to protect you. Sometimes he holds it back to grow you. And sometimes he holds it back to align the timing so that when it finally comes, everything will fit together perfectly. You may think you're waiting on God, but sometimes he's waiting on you to grow, to heal, to mature, to believe. Remember, every and not yet from heaven carries a promise hidden inside it. It means God has not forgotten you. It means his timing is better than your timing. It means he's working behind the scenes, arranging circumstances, moving people, opening doors that no man can shut. And when the appointed time comes, no devil in hell, no enemy in your way, no obstacle around you will be able to stop what God is releasing into your life. So wipe your tears, silence the doubt, and stand firm in faith. Delay does not mean denial. The blessing is on the way. The breakthrough is coming. The dream is alive. It may not come when you want it, but when it comes, it will be right on time, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. When life throws you into places you never imagined, you've got to remember that God is still in control. The very thing you thought was gonna break you is the very thing he will use to make you. What looks like a setback is not a punishment. It's preparation. It's redirection. Every disappointment, every betrayal, every detour is simply positioning you for what God has already prepared. You are not where you are by accident. You are exactly where you need to be for him to set you up for the next dimension of your destiny. Consider the story of Joseph. His brothers envied him, threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and thought they had ended his future. That pit looked like the end, but it was only the beginning of a divine setup. In Potiphar's house, when lies and false accusations landed him in prison, it seemed like a setback. Yet that prison became the very place where he interpreted the dreams that would later open the door to the palace. Step by step, pain by pain, God was orchestrating Joseph's promotion. Every betrayal was a push. Every rejection was a redirect. Every lonely night was a setup for the greatest comeback. What man meant for evil, God was turning for good. That's the way he works. He takes what looks like random chaos and arranges it into divine order. You may not understand it now, but one day you'll look back and see that what you thought was working against you was really working for you. The job you lost, the friend who walked away, the opportunity that slipped through your fingers, those weren't accidents, those were alignments. God had to close one door so he could swing open another. He had to move some people out so he could bring the right ones in. He had to shift you out of your comfort zone so he could move you into your calling. Sometimes the setup doesn't feel like a blessing. It feels like heartbreak, like disappointment, like failure. But here, feelings are not facts. Just because it feels like God has abandoned you doesn't mean he has. Just because it feels like you're losing doesn't mean you are. Often the greatest promotions are hidden inside the greatest pains. Liberty. The blessing is in disguise, and the disguise is the setback. You've got to trust the process. Seeds have to be buried before they can grow. Diamonds have to be cut before they can shine. Gold has to go through the fire before it is pure. And you, child of God, have to endure the setbacks so that you can stand strong in the setup. Don't curse the pit, don't despise the prison, and don't complain about the detour. It's all part of the plan. What if I told you that you are closer to your palace than you realize? That what you're calling a prison is just the hallway to your promotion? That the pain you're in right now is pushing you toward the place you prayed for? Don't give up in the middle of the process. Don't let bitterness rob you of your blessing. Don't allow fear to blind you to the fact that God is still working. When Joseph finally stood in the palace, second in command over Egypt, he looked back at his brothers, the same brothers who had thrown him into the pit, and he said, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." That is the testimony you will carry. That is the song you will sing. The very thing that was designed to destroy you will turn out to be the very thing that delivers you. So don't you dare despise the setback. Don't you dare quit in the pit. Don't you dare stop believing in the prison. Because God is setting you up, positioning you, arranging your steps for something greater than you could ever imagine. And when it finally unfolds, you'll realize it wasn't a setback at all. It was a setup for destiny. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I came to tell you today that the thing you're calling a setback is not the end of your story. It's not the final chapter. It's not the conclusion of your life. No, your setback is only a setup for a greater comeback. You see, we often think that when we stumble, when we fall, when the door slams shut, when the people walk away, when the job doesn't work out, that somehow God has forgotten us. But I stopped by to tell you, God is still writing your story. Sometimes life hits us so hard that we start to believe the story is over. We look at the wreckage of our dreams, the ashes of our plans, the broken pieces scattered on the ground, and we say to ourselves, this must be the end. But I came to tell you today, it is not the end. What you're calling a setback, heaven is calling a setup. What looks like a period in your sentence is nothing more than a comma in God's story for your life. It is not over. You've got to understand that every person who ever walked with God had moments where it looked like the lights were out and the curtain had fallen. Moses fled into the wilderness for 40 years thinking his destiny was done. Elijah sat under the juniper tree and begged to die, convinced his best days were behind him. The disciples wept at the foot of the cross, thinking their master's mission had failed. But what looked like defeat was only preparation for a greater victory. That's how God works. He takes what looks like an ending and turns it into the birthplace of a new beginning. The enemy loves to whisper in your ear during a setback, "You'll never recover. You'll never rise again. It's over for you." But the devil is a liar. You need to look at your situation and remind yourself, this is not where my story ends. You see, life has chapters, and just because you're in a painful chapter doesn't mean the whole book is a tragedy. God is the author and the finisher of your faith, and He never leaves a story unfinished. If He started something in you, He is faithful to complete it. Think about it. How can you call it the end when you're still breathing? As long as there is breath in your body, there is purpose on your life. You may have been knocked down, but you are not knocked down. You may be delayed, but you are not denied. You may have been pushed back, but you are still in the fight. And the very fact that you're still is proof that God is not through with you yet. When you face setbacks, don't let your emotions trick you into giving up too soon. The storm may rage, the winds may blow, the waves may crash, but storms don't last forever. The same God who brought you through before is the same God who will bring you through again. Stop looking at the size of the storm and start looking at the size of your God. He's bigger than your failure, bigger than your pain, bigger than your disappointment. Somebody here today needs to know that the setback in your health is not the end of your story. The setback in your finances is not the end of your story. The setback in your family, your relationships, your dreams, none of it is final. God is still moving behind the scenes. While you are crying, He is working. While you are waiting, He is shifting. While you are doubting, He is arranging. You can't always see His hand, but you can trust His heart. Don't bury yourself in hopelessness. Don't build a monument around your pain. Don't let the setback define you. This is just a chapter, not the whole book. The end has not been written yet, and when God holds the pen, you can rest assured that the story will end in victory. So lift up your head, square your shoulders, and remind yourself, my setback is not the end. It's just the beginning of something greater God is about to do in my life.